Welcome to Life Stories. Have you ever given everything for someone only to realize you were never really seen? Imagine spending years of your life trying to fit into a place that was never meant for you, doing everything you could to be loved and still feeling invisible. That's what happened to Emily. After a lifetime of sacrifice, she finally made a choice that shocked everyone, including herself. She walked away. But was it too late? Was there any way to go back, or had the damage been done long ago? As the snow began to fall, Emily's life changed in ways she never expected. But the real question is, could stepping away from everything finally set her free? Let's dive into Emily's story and find out what happens when you stop trying to fit in and start living for yourself. The wind howled outside, the sound of a distant snowstorm pressing against the windows of Emily's small Brooklyn apartment. Christmas lights twinkled on the street below, their warm glow a stark contrast to the cold stillness inside her room. A half-empty mug of tea sat untouched on her desk, the steam curling up like a quiet surrender. She had just walked through the door, still wearing her hospital scrubs, exhausted from another long shift in the emergency room. But there was no rest for her today. The suitcase in the corner, carefully packed for her family Christmas, sat as a reminder of the painful ritual she had come to dread every year. She had bought the gifts, baked the apple pie, just like her mother liked, and even remembered to pick up the ingredients for the bread pudding her family always raved about, but never seemed to acknowledge. She had done everything right. She always did. Yet somehow, she was always left standing outside the door. It was as if her presence was an afterthought, tolerated only when convenient. She sighed, kicking off her shoes, and slumped onto the couch. Her phone buzzed in her hand, the screen lighting up with a name she had seen 100 times before. Ryan, her younger brother. She had no idea what he needed now. More napkins, more favors. But she picked up the call anyway. "Hey, Emily." Ryan's voice came through, lighter than usual, almost rehearsed. "Hey, Ryan, what's up?" she asked, trying to sound more energetic than she felt. "So listen, Celeste is coming to Christmas this year." He paused for a moment, and Emily could hear a shift in his tone. "She's really sensitive to, energies and stuff, and well, with your work and everything, the hospital and all, it can feel a bit heavy. I think it might be better if you sat this one out, for her sake." The words stung, but Emily's response was calm, almost mechanical. "Okay," she said, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. Her hands gripped the phone tighter, and for a brief moment, she thought she might shatter it against the floor. An hour later, her mother called. Her voice was soft, the way it always got when she wanted to soften something painful. "Honey, we're just trying to make it easy for everyone. You know how Celeste is. If you come, it might cause confusion. Honestly, if you show up, we might not even answer the door." The silence that followed her mother's words felt like a weight pressing down on Emily's chest. She wasn't being asked to leave. She was being erased. And this time, she wasn't going to fight for a place at the table she had never truly belonged to. "Okay," she whispered again, her voice barely audible. She set the phone down, her eyes drifting to the pile of carefully wrapped gifts by the door. The perfect presents for the family that had never truly seen her. The ones she had loved so much, trying so hard to fit in, to make them proud. The ones who never noticed when she needed them, but always expected her to be there when they did. In the quiet of her apartment, the hum of the radiator, the only sound, Emily's mind began to work through everything. For years, she had convinced herself that love was something you had to earn, that being reliable, dependable, invisible, that was what family was about. She had given everything. She had sacrificed pieces of herself over and over, quietly, because she thought it would make her worthy of their love. But now, standing there in the dim light of her apartment, she realized something that pierced through her like a knife. She wasn't wanted. She was tolerated until it became inconvenient. Her fingers hovered over her phone again, but this time she wasn't dialing her family. She opened her banking app instead. The screen flickered to life with a familiar blue and white glow. With a few swift taps, she began to undo the automatic payments she had set up for her parents and brother over the years, the ones that had quietly kept their house from falling apart, the ones that had ensured their problems never became hers. Mortgage top-up? Canceled. Emergency maintenance fund? Locked. Car loan assistance? Terminated. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad either. There was only a strange kind of peace that settled in her chest, like the calm after a storm. For the first time, she was free. Free from the invisible chains that had kept her bound to a family who never once saw the cost of their expectations. The first snowflake fell outside, soft and relentless, blanketing the street below in a quiet that felt almost sacred. Emily watched it, feeling the weight of everything she had been carrying slip away, piece by piece. No more trying, no more shrinking herself down to fit into the cramped spaces they offered. She had given enough, and now she was done. But the silence was not to last. As Emily sat alone in her small apartment, a sudden buzz from her phone startled her. A message flashed across the screen, from Aunt Carol, a name she hadn't heard in years. It was just a simple message. "Can you answer? They're saying you ruined Christmas." Her stomach churned. Ruined Christmas? She hadn't even been there. The accusation felt like an accusation carved in stone. But how could her absence be so destructive? How could they twist the story in their favor, making her the villain when she wasn't even part of the equation? The phone rang again, and it was Aunt Carol. "They said you ruined everything," she said softly, as if trying to piece together a broken puzzle. "But you weren't even there." Emily's mind raced, the confusion mixing with a sense of betrayal. She had been erased so thoroughly, so completely, that now, even in her absence, she was being blamed. The weight of her family's expectations pressed against her chest again. But this time, it wasn't just frustration that bubbled up inside her. It was the final, bitter truth. She had always been the one to hold their world together. And now that she was gone, they couldn't see that she had been the foundation. How many times can you sacrifice your own happiness for people who never truly see you? When do you realize that the love you've been chasing was never really love at all? Emily stood up slowly, staring out the window at the snow. For the first time, the absence she felt wasn't painful. It was freeing. It was peace. And as the snow continued to fall, she knew she wasn't going back. The phone buzzed again, but this time she didn't reach for it. There was no more waiting for a seat at the table. There was only the freedom of walking away. The silence continued to stretch around her like an open road. No more trying, no more pleading, just the truth of who she was, finally enough. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from her parents. Desperate, pleading for her to make things right. But the words felt empty. She had already made her decision. She wasn't coming back. Would she ever truly be able to rebuild what was broken? Or had she already moved on to something far more important, herself? Emily sat still, the dim light of her apartment casting soft shadows on the walls. The snow outside continued to fall, each flake a quiet reminder of the peace that had settled in her heart since she walked away from the family that had never truly seen her. But now, as she sat there, the silence that had once felt like freedom began to shift. The weight of the moment seemed to grow heavier, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Her phone buzzed again, a familiar notification flashing on the screen. It was another email from her parents, this time less polished, more desperate. "We never meant to hurt you," it read. "We miss you. Can we start over?" The words felt like daggers wrapped in velvet. She had already heard these apologies in her head 1,000 times, rehearsed in their voices like a script they never bothered to write with sincerity. There was no mention of what they had truly done, no acknowledgement of the years of sacrifice she had silently given. Just a plea, a request for reconciliation that felt more like a transaction than an apology. Emily let out a long breath, closing her eyes as the echoes of their voices from the past few days filled her mind. She had walked away to protect herself, to finally stop living in the shadows of their expectations. But what was she supposed to do with this? With this sudden, false attempt at mending things? She stood up, pacing across the room, her thoughts like a storm inside her. Why now? She had spent years invisible to them, and now that she had stopped playing the role of the ever-sacrificing daughter, they were trying to rewrite the narrative. The pain of those years, of never being enough, of always being the one who fixed their problems without anyone ever noticing, still stung, raw and unhealed. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an email from her parents. It was a text from Ryan. "Emily, we need to talk. Mom and Dad are upset. They feel like you're abandoning us. Please, can we just have a conversation? This isn't you." The words felt like a slap across her face. This isn't you. Those words so simple, yet so suffocating. She had spent her entire life trying to be who they wanted her to be. Quiet, reliable, invisible. And now, when she finally found her voice, she was being accused of abandoning them. It was as if nothing she had done, nothing she had sacrificed, ever mattered. They only wanted the version of her that had been useful, the one who could be counted on to fix everything. Ryan's words gnawed at her, but she resisted the urge to reply immediately. Instead, she sat back down by the window, staring out at the snow-covered streets, her thoughts swirling like the storm outside. The silence of the room seemed to fill with a new kind of tension, one that was harder to ignore. Her mind raced back to the years of sacrifice, the money she had sent, the late-night calls, the emotional labor she had quietly shouldered. And for what? For them to come back with more demands, more expectations? Was this what family was? A never-ending cycle of giving, with nothing in return but the occasional hollow word of, "We miss you?" Then a thought flashed through her mind. She reached for the small framed letter on her desk, the one Celeste had sent her weeks ago. "You made a difference." Those words, carefully written, had meant more to Emily than any hollow apology or pleading message from her family. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen, not by her family, but by someone who understood her, someone who recognized her worth, not as a utility, but as a person. But now, as the snow continued to fall outside, Emily couldn't help but feel the pull of the past. The emotional tug was stronger than she had anticipated. The question gnawed at her. Could she really walk away from everything? From them? Was it enough to just cut the ties? Or would she always be haunted by the love she still felt for her family, despite everything they had done? She had spent so many years trying to earn their love, trying to make them proud. Could she really just let go of the idea of family that had been ingrained in her for so long? The phone buzzed again. She stared at the screen for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. It was a call from Ryan. Emily hesitated, then swiped to answer. "Emily, please," Ryan's voice cracked, and she could hear the desperation in it. "I'm sorry, I really am. But this isn't just about you. This is about all of us. We can fix this. I know we can." His words felt like a final plea, one last attempt to pull her back into the cycle she had tried so hard to escape. Her heart twisted in her chest, the old wounds reopening. But this time, the pain wasn't as sharp. This time, she could see it for what it was, a demand for her to return to her role, to go back to being the invisible one who carried all their burdens. "I've been carrying this family, Ryan," she said, her voice steady but raw. "And I can't do it anymore. You think this is just about me, but it's not. It's about everything I've given up, everything I've sacrificed. And for what? For a family that only wants me when I'm useful?" There was silence on the other end of the line, and Emily could almost hear the weight of his words, the guilt, the confusion. But she wasn't going to let him pull her back. Not this time. "I'm sorry, Ryan, I can't keep doing this." She hung up before he could respond. The room felt colder, the silence heavier. For the first time in a long time, Emily let herself feel everything she had been holding back. The anger, the sadness, the years of invisible pain. And then, just as quickly, it all washed away, replaced by something she hadn't expected. Peace. She wasn't running away. She was finally walking toward herself, toward the life she had put on hold for so long. She wasn't just letting go of her family. She was letting go of the version of herself they had tried to mold. And in that release, she felt something shift, something profound, something that felt like freedom. But just as the weight of the decision settled into her bones, her phone buzzed once more. It was a message from Aunt Carol. She opened it, and her breath caught. "I think it's time you knew something. Celeste, she's been talking about you. You need to hear it." The words left her breathless, a knot forming in her stomach. What could Celeste have said? Do you think Emily can ever truly escape the expectations of her family? What do you think Celeste is revealing that Emily doesn't know yet? Emily sat there, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time, she realized that the battle wasn't over yet. The twist was still coming, and the truth, whatever it was, would change everything. Emily stared at the screen of her phone, her heart pounding as she read Aunt Carol's message once more. "I think it's time you knew something. Celeste, she's been talking about you. You need to hear it." Her pulse quickened, a mix of dread and curiosity swirling inside her. What could Celeste have said? After everything that had happened, after the way her family had treated her, after she finally chose herself, what was left to be revealed? She felt a chill crawl up her spine, but she forced herself to breathe, steadying her shaking hands. It wasn't like her to seek more pain. She had spent years running from the truth, burying her feelings beneath obligations and sacrifices that had never been returned. But now something inside her yearned to understand, to know what had been said about her, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to heal what had been broken. Taking a deep breath, she tapped the screen to call Aunt Carol. "Emily." Her aunt's voice was soft, hesitant. "I know this isn't easy, but I think you deserve to know. Celeste, she's been talking about you all Christmas. At first she was curious, asked about you, about your life. But then, I could see it, the way her words shifted. She didn't just recognize you. She said something that stopped everyone in their tracks." Emily's grip tightened around the phone, her stomach twisting. What did she say? Aunt Carol paused, and Emily could hear the rustling of her aunt's breath. "She said you saved her grandmother's life. You didn't just do your job, Emily. You made her feel human again. She said you reminded her that she was still living, that she was still worth something." And when she said it, the room went silent. It hit everyone, including your parents. Emily sat back, the weight of her aunt's words settling over her like a blanket. Celeste. She had never thought much of Celeste, her brother's girlfriend, the one who had been so sensitive to Emily's presence during the holidays. But now, in that one sentence, she realized that Celeste, someone who wasn't bound by the same expectations, who didn't share the same history, had seen her. Not just as the dependable, invisible daughter, but as a person who had made a difference. A person who mattered. The realization hit her hard. She had spent her entire life trying to prove her worth to a family that had never fully recognized her value. Yet here was a stranger, someone on the outside, acknowledging her in a way her own family never had. "What happened next?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well," Aunt Carol continued, "your parents were shocked. They never realized how much you had done, how much you'd sacrificed. I could tell by the way they looked at each other, like they were seeing you for the first time. But then, of course, they did what they always do. They changed the subject. They deflected. They told Celeste it was a misunderstanding. They brushed it off. But Emily, I could see it. They were rattled. For the first time, they couldn't ignore the truth." Emily let out a long breath, the weight in her chest growing heavier. They were rattled. It was the first time in her life she felt like she was finally visible. Not because she had demanded it, not because she had fought for it, but because someone had seen her with clarity and compassion. And yet her family, her parents, the people who should have known her best, had turned away from it. They had turned away from her. The bitterness that had once festered inside her slowly dissolved into something softer. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding, and that, in itself, was enough for now. "Emily," Aunt Carol's voice brought her back to the present. "I just wanted you to know. I think you deserve to hear it, the truth about what you did for her grandmother. And I think you deserve to be seen. I hope you can see that now. Emily looked out the window, the soft snow falling like it had before. The world outside seemed unchanged, but everything within her had shifted. She didn't need them to validate her anymore. She didn't need their approval or their acknowledgement. For the first time, she understood that her worth wasn't tied to their vision of her. It wasn't tied to anything they had ever expected of her. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Ryan, his words stark against the quiet. Mom and Dad are desperate to fix things. Please, just come home. Let's make this right. We're sorry. Emily stared at the message, her mind racing. Make it right. But what did that even mean now? Was there any fixing the broken parts of her family that had never truly known her? Was it worth going back to a place where the love was measured in transactions, where the only way to be loved was to be needed? She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and typed out her response. I'm not coming back, Ryan. Not this time. I've already walked away from what didn't serve me, and I'm not going to step back into a life where I am invisible again. I'm sorry. She hit send. The weight she had carried for so long lifted as the message disappeared into the ether. She wasn't asking for permission anymore. She was making her own path. That night, as Emily lay in her bed, the quiet of the apartment feeling peaceful for the first time, she thought about what Aunt Carol had said about being seen. The truth was, Celeste hadn't just seen her, she had heard her. She had given her something her family never had. Recognition without expectation. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all Emily had ever needed. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the warmth of family coming together at Christmas, or the warmth of being accepted by the people she had always wanted to belong to. It was the warmth of being at peace with herself, of knowing that she was enough, exactly as she was. As the snow continued to fall outside, Emily finally understood that the most powerful act of love she could give to herself was to stop shrinking for others, to stop apologizing for her existence, to stop waiting for a family that never knew how to love her the way she deserved. She was free. How do you think Emily will find healing after everything she's been through? What do you think this story teaches about family, sacrifice, and self-worth? If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment with 100 to show your support. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to share this story with your friends, and thank you for watching Life Stories.